Hello and welcome to another episode of Sustainability Circle. I'm your host Montse, and today I wanted to talk to Michael Schmitt, who's a psychology professor at Simon Fraser University. He was actually one of the people who inspired me to make a change in my own life and work towards living consciously after taking one of his courses. I wanted to ask him about his own sustainability journey, climate grief and how to overcome that, and touch a little bit more about climate action and ways that we can mitigate climate change. So stay tuned.
I'm Michael Schmitt. I'm a professor of social psychology here at Simon Fraser University.
And how long have you been teaching or implementing sustainability into psychology?
I guess I've been doing that since around 2013, 2014, when I really started seriously looking at that in my research and teaching. I just looked around and I saw there wasn't enough work being done. In my field, there was small number of people doing research on sustainability or climate change or other environmental issues, but not very much. And I really feel strongly that every field has something to contribute to mitigating climate change and adapting to climate change, and I wanted to see psychology do the same. At the same time, I realized that we had lots of psychology students that were graduating with a bachelor's degree, and they never had a class that asked them to think very seriously about environmental issues. And I think that's a real disservice to students and the world. So I wanted to start creating some psychology courses that they could take to engage with those issues.
So what would you say are the top influencers or factors that contribute to climate change?
Well, I mean, the big one is burning of fossil fuels, right? And we use fossil fuels to power our economies and do lots of things that make our lives better. But at the same time, it's the main contributing factor to human-caused global warming. It's also causing lots of pollution for us and negative health effects as well. And we need to start thinking about shifting to other forms of energy that don't contribute to climate change and that are better for our health as well.
So within your research, what are examples of better alternatives to energy besides fossil fuels?
Right. Certainly solar and wind would be big ones. In BC, we have hydropower, and that's a less carbon emitting source than some others, although there are critiques of that as well in terms of how it damages ecosystems and some question about how carbon neutral it really is. We also need to look for ways of bringing our energy consumption down, and not just through increased efficiency, but thinking seriously about the things that are actually important to our well-being and to living full and happy lives. We waste a lot of energy on stuff that really doesn't contribute to anyone's happiness or well-being. So we need to rethink our priorities too, and bring our energy consumption down as much as possible as we're transitioning to other sources. I think it's very hard as individuals to try to bring our carbon footprint down to net zero or something like that. And that's because we live in a system that's still telling us to consume more and more, and we often don't have, as individual consumers, we often don't have very many good choices in terms of alternatives that are going to be good for the planet. So there are things that individuals can do that will bring their carbon footprint down. So shifting to a more plant-based diet, not using a gas-powered vehicle, trying to reduce or avoid air travel. Those are all things that can really contribute to an individual's footprint. But in addition to those, even if we had big uptake of those kinds of behaviors among the population, and I think we're seeing more and more people trying to shift their behavior in those ways, it's not going to be anything that's enough to actually mitigate climate change in a meaningful way. And so we need changes at the system level, right? We need government leaders and leaders in communities to be really pushing to a shift towards renewable energy and carbon neutral sources of energy. Without those kinds of changes in terms of laws and policies and regulations, we're not going to see the kinds of reductions in CO2 that we need to see to try to keep global warming from going into really disastrous disastrous place. So one of the things that I really encourage people to do that want to make a difference is to look past their individual behaviors and to look for other people that are really trying to change society in different ways by getting new groups into power, to try to influence groups that are in power, to try to shape policies that we know will reduce carbon emissions. And that's also a good way of coping with some of the anxiety that sometimes people feel about climate change, is finding other people who have the same kind of concerns that they can work with towards making the world a better place.
Yeah, I was just gonna go along with that. So how does one deal with climate grief, and is that something that happens to everyone?
I don't think it happens to everyone, but you know, it often happens to people that are most aware of the dangers that we face with climate change, and that are most concerned about it. In some ways, those are people that we really need to be well and healthy right now, because they're going to be working to try to make a change. And I think that more and more people do experience it. And one of the kinds of responses that many people have is to just try to turn away. I think that's increasingly hard to just turn away. I think people are seeing the effects of climate change, and they can see it with their own eyes, or just by watching news reports of extreme weather events. So I think people are starting to see this change, are really starting to recognize that there's a problem. And I think that the only way to really cope is to try to work together to find collective solutions to these things. So, and I think that even when the going is rough and you're working to try to encourage politicians to adopt some kind of policy or change some kind of policy here at an institution like SFU, this is a long pathway. There's lots of different work to be done. But I think when you're working with other people, when you meet a challenge or have a setback, you still know that you and these other people are doing what you can to try to make the world a better place. And that, I think, helps create a lot of resilience and helps sustain people so that they can go on to fight the good fight another day.
So what would you say are some areas that need more research within sustainability and climate action?
On the one hand, I think that we could use more research kind of across the board in terms of developing technologies that will increase energy efficiency, that will reduce or enhance the power of batteries to store energy and for longer periods of time. So there's a lot of technological research that where we need to see innovation. We know already the direction that kind of work needs to go towards electrification and towards carbon neutral sources of energy. But we need to move fast, so more investment in that kind of research would be really helpful. I think the other thing, in many ways though, we kind of don't need more research. We know what the problem is, and we already know many of the kinds of policies that would actually get us where we need to go. So what we really need are lots more people to get involved and to be creating a movement for bigger social change and to start implementing the solutions that we already know are there.
So I was reading something about, the economy and valuing things like GDP that's not inaccurate. I guess it doesn't reflect human values and stuff. And there's sort of like talk about a more circular economy, a social circular economy. Do you think that's realistic to sort of get to that point where everyone shifts their goals or their values and morals and everything like that?
I mean, there are more people that are wanting to live that kind of way. Whether we can transform our economy in that way is really, again, is a question of political will and how many people really get behind that kind of effort. So we can build a circular economy in many ways through regulation. Right now we have kind of a linear sort of economy in terms of production, where we get raw materials, we run it through some kind of production line, and then we have some end product, and that end product gets used by consumers, and then sometimes that just goes straight to the landfill. So we've got inputs that are raw materials coming from the earth, and outputs that are often things that are going back into the earth and maybe will still be there for 2,000 years or something like that. So there are ways of regulating, companies and how they're producing goods in terms of what is okay for them to use as inputs and what kinds of things it's okay for them to create as outputs. And if we create the right kinds of incentives and invest in developing the right kind of technology, the waste stream from one kind of production may be an input stream for another kind of production. So there are ways of doing this. But it's not easy. But it's really, we have laws and regulations that right now enable and support that kind of linear economy, right? So if we're able to set up a society where we can do it that way, well, why don't we think about what kinds of laws and regulations would start to make it into something more circular? I mean, that circular kind of thing, this is what happens in nature, right? Yeah. There's all these circles and cycles going around and around. And in some ways, if we want to be good members of, citizens of this planet, we need to look at how the rest of the planet works. And it's pretty unusual to have that kind of linear sort of process. And so we need to think about ways in which our economics, our production, our consumption, all these things can be part of some kind of circular process rather than something that's so linear.
Along with that, what would you say, what are your thoughts on the current, climate strikes going on? Are they effective in shifting the views of politicians and government and all of that?
I think that they are. I think, in terms of sort of concrete actions, it's hard to nail down particular successes or victories that have resulted directly from climate strikes. But I am certain that the public consciousness of climate change and public concern has gone up as a function of climate strikes. When people see that many young people and older people going out for climate strikes in really huge numbers, you start to get the sense that, hey, there's people that are worried about this too, and are worried about this, and maybe I should be worried about this too. So I do think in terms of building broad public support and helping to create a movement to try to address climate change, that they've been very successful. And they've been very successful in engaging young people who aren't typically afforded a voice. Yeah. So young people found their own. And so I think that in that way it's quite powerful, and in some ways that in itself is a major success.
So as a professor, have you seen, the impact that you're making on your students, or have you heard what their biggest concerns are when talking about it?
I hope I've had a good influence on my students. Every time I teach a course on climate change or other environmental issues, there are some students that will come to me towards the end of the course and say that through their learning in the course, they've really become concerned and motivated and want to try to do something. Sometimes they tell me that they're starting to feel anxious about things. And many of those students do go on to find groups that they can work with to try to make a difference through collective actions. A number of students, they may not join a group, but certainly their views have shifted, and sometimes their individual consumption behaviors have shifted, which is in some ways a small thing, but the changes that someone makes in their individual life can have ripple effects to everybody that they know. When someone says, "What, you're eating less meat now? Why are you doing that?" It's an opportunity for someone to talk about why climate change is an important thing for us to engage with. But again, I always encourage people, if they're feeling excited and motivated to try to make a difference, or if they're feeling anxious and depressed because they can't believe what we're doing to the planet, is to find other people that share those concerns and that are already working together to try to make a difference. It's the best way to make a difference, and it's the best way to take care of yourself in what is a pretty scary world.
For sure. Where do you hope to see the world, in the future, in the next 10 years?
Well, it would be great if in the next 10 years that graph of carbon emissions, instead of going up, really started to make a turn downward. That's what the IPCC is telling us needs to happen, is that we really need to start making that movement downward now. I'd like to see in many places around the world, climate-sincere politicians getting into power and being supported by really broad movements of young people and older people are pressing to engage in a real transformation of our economy and our society in a way that takes care of people and takes care of the planet at the same time.
Thank you for watching this episode of Sustainability Circle. For more information, check the description bar down below, and I hope you enjoyed this episode.